I think Sucker Punch is good, okay? Hello, welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and it's been a long time, but I think it's time to do another unpopular opinion. I've talked on this channel before about how much I defend and like Zack Snyder as a director. Now, in recent years, I've kind of set that aside because I honestly haven't liked some of his more recent movies, but when you bring up Zack Snyder, the first movie that always comes to mind to me is going to be Sucker Punch, and I genuinely like that movie. I think the main reason people don't like this movie, well, there's a couple, but one of them is mismarketing. This movie was marketed as this big action blockbuster from the director of 300 about these 5 badass women kicking butt going against orcs and robots and dragons and all this cool shit. Also, they're hot. They're really hot. And that's not really the point of this movie. If you haven't seen the movie or just haven't seen it in a while and forget what it's about, it follows Emily Browning's character who plays this young girl who is attacked by her stepfather following the death of her mother. While trying to defend herself, she accidentally kills her sister and is locked in an insane asylum with a date for a lobotomy. This reality is so traumatizing and too hard to handle that she escapes into the recesses of her mind into a fantasy where she is instead working as a dancer. Now, this fantasy can only protect her so much. It is still a dark reflection of a dark reality. So even within this fantasy that she's escaped to, she needs to escape again further into a second fantasy. Go in 2 steps behind reality, behind the curtain to escape from everything. From there, she goes into this reality where she's essentially a superhero character who defeats her enemies that are disgusting goblins, zombies, and faceless droids. In there, she can do pretty much whatever she wants. She can defend herself. She can survive against all of her attackers. She is, like I said, pretty much a superhero. However, in the end, these fantasies are just that. Fantasies, and they cannot truly help her escape from reality. She has to face that in the end. We see through the various levels of the fantasy what she is actually doing in reality, which is trying to escape from the insane asylum. She sets fire to a closet, she attacks the cook, and she gets in trouble in a lot of different ways that are all reflected in the fantasies. However, in the end, she's only able to help one of the other patients escape, and she is still given the lobotomy and loses her mind. It's a very tragic story, a very dark story, but a very well told story in a lot of different ways. First of all, the cinematography is just fantastic. Like or hate Zack Snyder, his early movies that had Larry Fong do the cinematography have brilliant cinematography. Yes, he does the crazy amounts of slow-mo and big over-the-top action sequences, but yeah, they're fun. They really are fun. And it's not just those shots. I'm talking about crazy good artistic shots. I mean, the entire opening scene to this movie is so beautiful, and there's shots like this throughout the entire movie. It's not just the beginning. Yes, there is a lot of slow-mo in this movie, but it's a stylistic choice, and it works very well when it's used. It's also just really cool stylistically. I know there's a lot of CGI, a lot of times in places that we don't necessarily need it, like in backgrounds and stuff like that, but it is a stylistic choice that does, I think, work how it's used. Mix that in with the dark themes and the way that the scenes are colored. I just love how this movie looks and feels, especially in the scenes that take place in reality. Moving from there, we do have the crazy big action scenes that everybody talks about in Zack Snyder movies, love or hate them. Once again, they are fun in this application. Are they stupid? Are they ridiculous? Yes, but in this case, it makes sense. These are her fantasies. They're not supposed to be realistic. Like I said, she's a superhero. She's able to dodge bullets, deflect bullets with her sword, fall from great heights, and jump even higher. None of that is supposed to be taken seriously. Like I said, this is all a reflection of a reality. The farther away from reality we get, the more ridiculous it's going to be. But on the flip side, therefore, when we come back to reality, the realness of it and the severity and the darkness of it is crushing, and it comes crashing down on you. I think it makes that final scene in the insane asylum all the more powerful when we see it in this dark, gritty reality versus the fantasy. We see the doctor for who he truly is, not some pimp in a fancy suit, but this sniveling, grotesque, pathetic doctor. It makes that scene hit so much harder when it's put in contrast with something much lighter. I will also say a lot of people complain about this movie because of the acting. A lot of people think that the acting in this movie is bad. I once again disagree with that. I think the main reason people think the acting is bad is because the dialogue is cheesy. But once again, the dialogue is only cheesy in the fantasy, and especially in the fantasy of the fantasy.
Remember, ladies, if you don't stand for something, You'll fall for anything.
Like I said before, the farther away we get from reality, the cheesier and more fantastical it gets. But in reality, all of the dialogue is just normal, and the acting is normal. I know there are actors like Emily Browning and Vanessa Hudgens in this movie that aren't really considered A-listers, but it also has Oscar Isaac, Carla Gugino, and John Hamm, who are all fantastic, especially Oscar Isaac. He is amazing in this movie. I honestly enjoy all of his scenes, but there's two of them that stick out to me as being really good every time I see them. One of them honestly does have more to do with the writing, but I still enjoy how he portrays the character when he is in his office noticing that things are going wrong. First, he notices that the copy machine is warm, and then that leads him to the map where he discovers that there's been a second hole poked through where the thumbtacks are. I just love that scene. I love how the bad guy isn't portrayed as some moron, but somebody who can actually think and figure out things on his own, even subtle things. I also love the contrast of the scene when he's just a sniveling, pathetic man at the end of this movie. That acting from Oscar Isaac is amazing. It shows such a complete different character than the version we see in the fantasy. And then lastly, if not the biggest reason people hate this movie, is that they think it's some weird, dark, twisted fantasy from Zack Snyder about these women, putting them in rapey situations and showing them being taken advantage of. But that's not the point. That's the bad guys doing that shit. What this movie at its core is showing is that these men are evil. With the exception of John Hamm, who's not in on the thing, these men that work at this hospital are disgusting. And that's why in these fantasies, the men are portrayed as these heartless zombies, these brainless robots, these disgusting orc-like creatures, and these big giant monsters. Because to these women, that's what they are. The women are the main characters in this movie, and it's about them trying to take back their lives, take back their dignity, take back their power. It's shown from the very first scene in this movie that women who try to stand up for themselves are called insane and are not believed. That is a very prevalent point now, as well as when this movie came out, but it's been a thing pretty much forever. And so it follows these women as they're trying to overcome that any way they can. And yes, they use a system that they're placed in, they dance sexy to get what they want, but it's like they're placed in that situation, and that is how they overpower these mindless, heartless zombies. So no, this movie isn't a big action blockbuster about badass women like we were led to believe from the trailer. In fact, the action is pretty minimal. It's cut out a lot. And it's also not about women stripping or dancing sexily. That's why it's never really shown. Emily Browning doesn't dance once in this movie. It never actually shows her dance because that's not the focus, that's not the point, and that's a great way to show it. The action, the dancing, it's all a means to an end. It's about these women taking back their lives. So yes, it's cheesy, intentionally so. Yes, it's over the top, intentionally so. It's also very dark and very thought-provoking and very interesting. I also just love the fact that it's like a fantasy within a fantasy. I know it came out the year after Inception, but people were obsessed with that idea at the time of like a dream within a dream. I'm not trying to say this movie is as good as Inception, it's not, but it's still really fun to think about and a really interesting concept. This movie really just gets a lot of hate, and I really don't think it deserves it. To me, it's Zack Snyder's best movie. I mean that. I genuinely really like this movie. I really do. But that's just my opinion. I am in the severe minority on this. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to like, share. And if you're new here, subscribe. Thanks, guys. Bye.